The night was quiet, almost too quiet, as the alien village under the twin moons rested in sleep. But then, out of nowhere, a scream tore through the silence. It wasn't just any scream, was full of fear, sharp, high-pitched, and it came from the dark forest. The sound made even the bravest of villagers freeze. No one moved, no one spoke. They all knew what that scream meant. Something bad, something dangerous. Jace, a young human boy, was sitting alone outside the village circle. He was the only human in this alien village, and most didn't speak to him much. But when he heard the scream, he didn't wait. He stood up, heart pounding, and ran straight into the forest without thinking. His legs moved faster than his mind. His thoughts were only on one thing: someone needed help. The trees were tall and strange, glowing with soft lights, and the shadows twisted in weird ways. But Jace kept running. He followed the sound, brushing past thick leaves and strange roots. Then he saw her, an alien girl about his age, trapped, her back against a tree, her eyes wide with terror, and in front of her was a creature unlike anything Jace had ever seen. It was a beast huge, with black fur, glowing red eyes, and long claws that scraped the ground. Its teeth were sharp, dripping with green saliva. It looked more like a nightmare than an animal. The alien girl was frozen in fear, her tiny body shaking, and the beast was ready to pounce. Jace didn't stop to think. He didn't have a weapon, didn't have a plan, but he jumped in front of the beast anyway. He spread his arms to shield the girl, shouting at the creature, trying to scare it off, but it didn't run. It roared, loud enough to shake the trees, and then it leaped toward him. The beast slammed into Jace, and the two crashed to the ground. He felt the weight of it, the power, and then the pain as its sharp teeth sank into his shoulder. He screamed, but he didn't let go. He grabbed a thick branch lying nearby and smashed it into the beast's side. Again and again, the creature howled, trying to shake him off, but Jace didn't stop. The alien girl, still frozen, watched as this human, someone no one trusted, fought for her life. For her safety, just when the beast tried to bite again, Jace stabbed it in the eye with the broken branch. The monster let out a horrible cry and finally ran off, crashing through the trees and disappearing into the night. Jace collapsed, blood running down his arm, his body shaking. The girl rushed to him, tears in her eyes. "You saved me," she whispered, pressing her small hand over the bleeding bite. His vision was blurry. The pain was burning, deeper than a normal wound. He nodded weakly. Then everything turned black, back in the village. The noise had drawn a crowd. Several villagers had arrived just in time to see the end of the fight. They stood in silence, shocked, looking down at the human boy lying in the grass and the girl crying over him. No one knew what to say. They had ignored Jace, called him strange, treated him like an outsider. But now he had done something none of them had ever dared. He had fought a soul beast and lived. One elder stepped forward, her voice low. "That mark. It's not just a bite," she said. Everyone looked at Jace's shoulder, where the bite was glowing faintly, like something alive was under the skin. "It's a soul beast mark," she added. "He may have been brave, but now he's cursed." Some nodded in agreement, others looked afraid. The village chief, tall and silent, arrived and stared at Jace for a long time. He said nothing, just watched. Then he looked at the girl, who was still holding the boy's hand, her face firm, her tears dry now. She didn't let go. They carried Jace back to the healer's hut. His wound was cleaned, but it wouldn't stop glowing. The healer shook his head. "The bite? It's changing him," he whispered. The news spread fast. Jace had been bitten, and no human had ever survived that kind of wound before. Some villagers believed he would become a monster. Others said he would die soon. But one thing was sure: Jace was no longer just a human boy. That night, as the twin moons rose higher. The forest fell silent again, but in the village, no one slept. They watched the healer's hut from afar, afraid and curious, wondering what the boy would become. The girl who had been saved sat beside him, holding his hand, whispering, "Thank you," over and over, not knowing that this moment would change both their lives forever. Jace woke up slowly. His whole body hurt, but most of all, his shoulder felt like it was on fire. The pain wasn't normal, it was deep, sharp, and it pulsed like something inside was alive. He tried to move, but his limbs felt heavy. He blinked, and a face appeared above him. It was the alien girl, one he had saved from the beast. She smiled weakly and whispered, "You're safe now." Her eyes were still red from crying, but she looked calm now. She had been by his side all night, holding his hand, waiting for him to wake up. Jace tried to speak, but only a small sound came out. She gently placed a damp cloth on his head and said, "Don't move too much. You lost a lot of blood." Outside the healer's hut, the village was uneasy. Word had spread. Everyone knew what had happened. The human boy had fought a soul beast and survived, but more than that, he had been bitten, and no one ever survived a soul beast bite without changing. Some said the bite was a curse. Others believed it gave unnatural powers, but always at a cost. Inside, Jace turned his head and saw his shoulder, a glowing mark, spread from the bite like vines of light under his skin. It pulsed softly with a green and gold hue. It didn't look like an injury, it looked like something had taken root inside him. He stared at it, breathing fast. What is that?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The alien girl hesitated. "They call it the soul mark," she said quietly. "It means the beast gave you part of its soul." Jace looked at her in confusion. "It's soul," she nodded. "Soul beasts don't just kill. They bind when they bite someone, and that person lives. They leave a mark, and that mark changes the person forever." Jace looked back at his shoulder, the pain now feeling cold and hot at the same time. "What kind of change?" he asked. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small charma, carved stone tied to a thread. She placed it in his hand and said, "My mother gave this to me. It's for protection. Keep it close." He closed his fingers around it, feeling warmth in the charm. At that moment, a group of villagers entered the hut. They looked serious. Their leader, Elder Merrick, spoke first. "He is awake," he said, his voice heavy, but he is not the same. The healer stood by Jace's side. "His body fights the change, but it's already begun." One of the elders pointed at Jace's glowing wound. "That mark does not belong in this village," he said. "That power, it brings danger." Leary, the alien girl, stepped between them. "He saved my life," she shouted. "You would have let the beast kill me, but he didn't. He fought without fear." But the elder did not look moved. "We honor his bravery," he said coldly, "but that does not erase the risk. He must be judged before he brings darkness into our home." Jace sat up despite the pain. "Judge me?" he asked, "for saving someone?" Elder Marak nodded slowly. "You were bitten by a soul beast, human or not. We cannot ignore what may come next. The chief must see you." The chief, an old and silent man who rarely spoke, lived in the high chamber. Jace was helped up by Leary and slowly walked out of the hut. Villagers stood on both sides of the path, whispering, staring at the glowing mark. Some looked afraid, others curious, but no one stepped forward to help. No one smiled when they reached the chief. The old man stared at Jace for a long time. Without speaking, his eyes went to the mark on the shoulder, then to Jace's face. He finally spoke in a deep, slow voice. "You feel it, don't you?" Jace nodded. "Yes." The chief stepped forward and placed his hand gently over the wound. His eyes closed for a moment, then he pulled away. "The beast left its spirit in you," he said, "and it is strong. This mark is not just a sign. It is a test." Leary looked confused. "A test?" The chief turned to her. "A test of will, of heart. Some who carry the soul mark lose their minds. Others gain power they cannot control. The question is not whether he is dangerous. The question is, can he choose not to be?" Jay stood tall despite the pain. "Then let me prove it," he said. "Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it." The chief stared into his eyes, and for the first time there was a small nod. "Then you shall face the trial of spirit." The room grew silent. Even the elders looked shocked. The trial of spirit was ancient, almost forbidden. Leary gasped. "No one has taken that trial in years." But the chief raised his hand. "He must face it. If he fails, we will know the beast has already won." And with those words, Jace's fate was sealed. He had saved a life and earned a curse. Now, to keep that life safe, he would have to fight the beast inside him next. The village was quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. Something had changed since the night Jace was bitten. People spoke in low voices, their eyes always watching him. He could feel it, the fear, the doubt, the whispers behind his back. Every step he took through the village felt heavy, like walking through thick fog of suspicion. Leary stayed close to him, always walking beside him, always defending him. But even her presence couldn't stop the stares. The glowing mark on Jace's shoulder had stopped hurting, but it hadn't faded. It pulsed sometimes, especially at night, like it was alive under his skin. One morning, before the sun had fully risen, a loud knock came at the healer's door. Jace opened it and found 3 elders standing outside. Their faces were serious, their eyes cold. One of them spoke firmly. "Come with us. Something has happened." Jace followed them through the village, past the square, past the well. All the villagers were awake and standing in a circle near the grain store. There was smoke in the air and the smell of fire. Part of the storehouse had been burned, blackened, and charred. A few small alien creatures cried as their food was lost in the ash. Elder Merrick stepped forward and pointed at the damage. "This happened during the night," he said loudly, "and someone saw a shadow with glowing light walking nearby." He turned slowly to face Jace. "A light, like the mark on your body." A murmur spread through the crowd. Jace's heart dropped. "You think I did this?" he asked. "Why would I?" Elder Marok narrowed his eyes. "We don't know what lives inside you now, human. You carry the soul beast's spirit. Perhaps it wakes when you sleep." "I didn't do it," Jace said, louder this time. "I didn't even leave the healer's hut." Leary stepped forward quickly. "He was with me all night." "I would have known if he moved," but another voice called out from the crowd. "That's not proof. The beast inside could make him move without knowing." The villagers nodded, fear growing. Some backed away as if afraid he'd explode. Others just stared in silence. The chief arrived slowly, staff in hand. His eyes scanned the crowd before settling on Jace. "You were brave," the chief said, "but now you carry a danger we do not understand." Jace clenched his fists. "I didn't ask for this. I just tried to help her." He pointed at Leary. "That thing would have killed her." The chief nodded slowly. "And we are grateful. But the soul beast bite changes more than the body. It tests your spirit, and some spirits break. What do you want from me?" Jace asked. His voice cracks not from weakness, but frustration. Another fight. Another test. The chief raised his hand to silence the crowd. "You will face the trial of spirit," he said again. "Not tomorrow, not next week tonight." Leary gasped. "That's not fair. He's still healing." But the chief spoke calmly. "If the spirit inside him grows too strong, we cannot wait. This is not punishment. It is protection for all." That evening, As the sun set and shadows stretched long, Jace sat alone in a small hut at the edge of the village. His mind raced. What if he failed? What if the thing inside him really was dangerous? He looked at his hands, shaking slightly, and whispered, "I don't want to hurt anyone." Leary entered quietly, carrying a bowl of warm soup. She sat beside him, silent at first. Then she placed something on the floor between them, a small drawing. It was of Jace standing in front of a large beast, arms open wide. Behind him, a tiny version of Leary peeking from the trees. "You protected me when no one else would," she whispered. "So now, I will protect you too." Jace stared at the drawing for a long time, then smiled faintly. "Thank you," he said. "But this, I have to do alone." Leary shook her head. "You're not alone. Not really." The night grew darker, and drums began to beat from the village circle. Slow and deep, they echoed across the trees. Calling everyone to gather, the trial was ready. The circle of stones was lit with glowing crystals, and the air felt heavier, as if something ancient was watching. Jace walked toward the circle, his body still sore, but his steps firm. The villagers watched in silence. The chief stood at the center and raised his staff. "Jace, human boy," he said, "you stand between two paths, the beast's path or your own." Jace stepped into the circle, the crystals flaring brighter as he passed. Then, everything went still. The wind stopped, the night hushed. And suddenly, Jace was gone. Not in body, but in spirit. He had entered the trial world. Back in the real world, Leary clutched the charm her mother had given her, her eyes locked on the glowing circle. "Come back," she whispered. "Please come back, inside the trial." The real battle was just beginning. Jace opened his eyes, and the world around him was gone. No village, no trees, no sky, just darkness stretching forever. And a cold wind that didn't touch his skin but cut straight into his soul. He stood inside the trial of spirit now, alone. Then he heard it. Soft footsteps behind him. He turned quickly, expecting danger, but saw himself, another Jace, same face, same eyes. But the other one was smiling in a strange way, not kind, not real. "So," the shadow Jace said, "you think you're a hero." Jace didn't answer. His hand instinctively went to the charm Leary had given him. But it wasn't there. Nothing was here, no weapons, no help. Just the dark and this twisted reflection of himself. "You saved the girl," the shadow Jace said, circling him. But was it bravery or guilt? Jace frowned. Guilt? For what? "For being weak," the shadow said. "For being left behind on a world that's not yours. For wanting anyone to look at you like you matter." Jace stepped back, but the shadow kept following him. "You don't belong here." It whispered, "They'll never trust you. You saw it already. They fear you, and deep down, you fear yourself." Suddenly, the world shifted, the floor cracked. And Jace fell down into something cold and black. He hit the ground hard, gasping, and when he looked up, he was no longer alone. Dozens of red eyes stared at him from the dark soul beast shapes, glowing and silent. They didn't attack. They just stood there, like ghosts, waiting to judge him. Then the biggest one stepped forward. Its eyes different, golden, ancient. It spoke without a mouth. The voice deep and inside his head. "You carry my mark. Little human," it said. "You took my pain, my bite. Now take my truth." Jace tried to stand, but the soul beast placed one claw gently on his chest, holding him still. "Do you know why I bit you?" it asked. Jace shook his head, breathing hard. "To kill me." The soul beast's eyes glowed brighter. "No. To test you." Images flooded Jace's mind, visions of the soul beast's past. It had once been a peaceful creature, guarding sacred places, protecting life. But it was hunted, chained, and broken. And when it escaped, it became something else, angry, lost, full of rage. Its bite wasn't just pennant, was memory passed to anyone who survived. You saw a girl in danger. The soul beast said, and you chose pain over fear. That is rare. Jace stood up slowly. So, this trial, it's not about beating you. The beast nodded. It's about knowing me. And knowing yourself. Suddenly, the shadow Jace appeared again, laughing. But what if knowing yourself means seeing the monster inside? He taunted. What if you're already turning into one of them? Jace stared at him, heart pounding. Then he stepped forward. Maybe I am changing, he said. But I'd rather be something new than something useless. I'd rather become a monster that protects than a human who runs. The soul beasts vanished, the darkness cracked, and light spilled in through the cracks. The shadow Jace screamed and faded like smoke. And the charm Lyri's charm appeared glowing in Jace's palm again. He gripped it tightly, and the world shattered into light. Outside the spirit circle, the villagers waited. The crystals had gone dim. The trial had been going on for hours longer than any before. Many thought he was lost. Some were ready to declare him dead. But then, the stones around the trial circle flared white, blinding bright, and Jace collapsed forward out of the center. Gasping for air, his skin covered in light, then fading slowly to normal. The mark on his shoulder no longer glowed, was just a scar now. Silent and still, Lyri rushed to him, catching him before he fell. Jace, she cried, you did it. He looked at her with tired eyes and whispered, the beast. It wasn't evil, it was just hurt. The chief walked toward him slowly, the whole village behind him in silence. He studied Jace's breath, his eyes, his strength. Then, without saying a word, the chief bent down and touched his forehead to Jace's. The crowd gasped. It was the mark of respect, the highest given. The chief stood and turned to the village. He passed the trial. He said firmly, and not just as a human, but as one of us. The village exploded in emotions. Some clapped, others cried. And for the first time since his arrival, Jace felt like he truly belonged. Not just as a boy who saved a girl, but as someone with a purpose. But in the far corner of the village, a set of unseen eyes watched from the shadows, and a voice whispered in the dark, the beast chose him for a reason. And that reason is not yet finished. The village was buzzing, not with celebration, but with confusion. Some villagers still clapped when the chief declared Jace one of them. Others just stood still, too shocked to speak. No one expected him to return from the trial of spirit. And no one expected what the chief did next. Jace sat near the fire, his body tired, but his eyes sharp. Lyri handed him a warm drink, and for the first time in days, he smiled just a little, but deep inside, something was still shifting. He could feel the beast's memories still flickering in his mind like old sparks. Not pain, not fear, something unfinished. The chief called for a gathering. All villagers young and old stood before him as he raised his staff. His voice rang out over the wind. A decision must be made, he said. This boy carries the mark of the soul beast, but he fought it. He faced his darkness and returned with light. Many nodded, some even bowed their heads. But Elder Marok stepped forward, his face tight. You say he returned with light. But what if it's only for now? He asked. What if the change grows later? What if he turns into something we cannot stop? The chief looked at him calmly. Then we train him, he said. Not as a threat, but as a protector. Gasps filled the air. Train him? One alien woman asked. Ask what? The chief turned to Jace, his eyes steady as the next guardian of our village. The crowd exploded in voices, some shouting, some protesting, others whispering. Jace stood slowly, not in pride, but in disbelief. Guardian. He said quietly, me. The chief nodded. Long ago, we had warriors called flamewalkers. They were chosen when they survived a soul beast's bite. But no one has worn the title in 100 years until now. Elder Merrick's face darkened. That tradition is dead for a reason. He shouted, "You saw what happened the last time he burned half the mountain before we ended him." But the chief raised his hand, silencing all. That boy, he pointed at Jace, chose pain over safety. He fought. For someone not his own kind, he entered the trial without crying, and came back with the beast's memory. He is not just human anymore. He is something more. Leary stepped forward beside Jace, her eyes shining. "He saved me once," she said softly, "but he keeps saving all of us. Even when we push him away." A silence settled over the crowd, a heavy one. Then an old alien warrior from the back, half blind and bent with age, stepped forward. He pulled a long cord from around his neck. Tied with the broken tooth of a soul beast, he limped toward Jace and placed it around the boy's neck. Then, "Let him wear this," the elder said. "It belonged to the last guardian. Let him carry it forward." Jace looked down at the tooth, cold but powerful, the moment it touched his skin. He felt something deep in his chest, like a drumbeat from a different time, and just for a second. He saw fire, not around him, but inside him. It didn't burn, it guided that night. The chief came to Jace alone, away from the crowd. They sat on a high cliff where stars shimmered above and strange flying creatures soared in silence. "You think I'm not afraid," the chief said quietly. "But I am." Jace looked at him, surprised. "Then why trust me?" The chief smiled faintly. "Because long ago, I was you." He pulled back his sleeve, revealing a small, faded scar on his arm. It glowed. Just barely, the same way Jace's used to glow. "I too was bitten," he said. "And I too passed the trial. But I hid it, because I wasn't brave. Like you, I feared what others would think." Jace stared at the mark in silence. "Then why speak now?" "Because you reminded me who I used to be," the chief replied. "And I believe you'll be stronger than I ever was." As the wind blew gently and the stars blinked overhead, Jace made a silent promise to himself. He would protect this village, not because they all accepted him, but because he chose to. Not for praise, not for a title, but for the girl who never let go of his hand, for the chief who saw him as more, and for the beast whose memory still lived inside him. But far beyond the cliffs, deep in the mountains, something stirred, something that watched the flames from afar and whispered in a dark voice, "The guardian is born again. Then we must return too." The next morning, the sky was heavy with gray clouds. Thunder rolled in the distance, but no rain fell. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Today was the day of the final rite. Jace stood at the edge of the village, a pack on his back. The bone necklace of the ancient guardian hung around his neck, heavier than before, not in weight, but in meaning. In front of him was a path that no villager had walked in 100 years. The Ridge of Spirits, it was a dangerous place, high in the cliffs, filled with old ruins and wild winds. But that wasn't what made it deadly. Deep in those ruins slept a second soul beast, one that had never been tamed, never been touched by a human or alien. It was called the Memory of Flame, and it waited only for those with the mark. Jace turned to Leary, who had followed him halfway. Her eyes were wide with worry. "You don't have to go," she whispered. "The chief already chose you. Why risk everything now?" Jace smiled faintly. "Because the final rite isn't about being chosen. It's about choosing back." She looked confused, but nodded slowly. "Just come back," she said. "I don't care if you come back stronger. Just come back alive." Jace walked on, the wind pulling at his clothes as he climbed the ridge. The air got thinner, colder. The village faded behind him, until it was only a memory. In front of him, stone pillars rose like broken teeth from the ground, glowing softly with old symbols. The place felt ancient. Like time itself had stopped here. In the center of the ruins was a stone circle, cracked and faded. Jace stepped into it, and immediately, the wind stopped. The silence was total then. The ground trembled from the darkness between the stones. A shape emerged, massive, slow, glowing with golden fire inside its black fur. Its eyes were the color of burning suns. It didn't roar, didn't charge. It simply looked at Jace with a gaze older than anything he had felt before. "You carry the soul of my brother." It spoke inside his mind. "Why have you come here, small guardian?" Jace didn't flinch. "To prove I am more than a survivor," he said. "To face you on myself." The beast growled low, not in anger, but in understanding. "Then come, let us see if you are flame." Osh! Suddenly, the trial began. Not with claws or teeth, but with vision. The world around Jace vanished again. He stood in a burning field, his village in flames, the people he cared about, Lieri, the chief, even elder, Merrick, trapped in fire, screaming, begging for help. Jace ran forward, but the flames moved with him, always keeping him out. Then he saw himself, his own face, standing in the middle, watching the fire with cold eyes. "This is what happens," the mirror Jace said. "When you trust the beast, when you let power guide your heart." "No," Jace growled. "This isn't real. It is one future," the shadow said, "and it can still happen." Jace closed his eyes, focused on Lieri's voice, on the memory of the charm she gave him. He reached inside himself, not to pull the beast out, but to calm it. He didn't need to kill the flame. He needed to hold it. When he opened his eyes, the fire was gone. The burning field faded to light, and the soul beast stood before him. Again, watching, waiting, the beast nodded slowly. "You have fire," it said, "but you do not burn others with it." It stepped forward and lowered its massive head. "Take what remains of me," it whispered, "and protect those who cannot protect themselves." Jace reached out, placing his hand gently on the beast's fur. Instead of pain, warmth flowed through him, calm, steady, alive, not just power, but balance. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the ruins, standing alone. But the wind had changed. It now moved around him, soft and respectful, and in the stone beside him, the mark of a guardian was glowing, freshly carved, as if by invisible fire. He touched the mark, and it pulsed once, a bond sealed, a promise made. Jace walked down the mountain as the storm broke above him. Rain fell heavy, washing the dust from his face, but he didn't stop. With every step, he felt more sure of who he was. Below, in the village, the chief waited with the people. Lieri stood at the front, soaking wet but unmoving, and when they saw Jace coming down live, walking tall, with the glow of the guardian mark on his chest, no one said a word. They just bowed their heads, and in that silent moment, the village understood. He wasn't just a boy who survived. He was now something greater. A bridge between human and alien. A soul touched by fire, yet shaped by mercy. The guardian had returned, but war was coming with him, and the final test was still ahead. The village had changed. Jace could feel it the moment he stepped back inside the boundary stones. Before, people had stared at him with fear and suspicion. Now, they stepped back with quiet respect. Some even nodded. A few even smiled. But the loudest welcome came from Lieri, who ran straight to him through the rain and threw her arms around him. "You came back?" she whispered. "You really came back?" Jace laughed softly. "I told you I'd return." The chief stepped forward next, his eyes scanning the mark, now glowing just below Jace's collarbone. "You didn't just pass the final rite," he said. "You completed it fully. No tricks, no shortcuts. You've bonded with both beast's bane and flame. That has not happened in hundreds of years." Jace nodded, but his eyes weren't calm. "Not completely. I saw something up there." he said quietly. Something in the flame's memory. Something coming, a threat not just to this village, but to others, maybe the whole region. The chief's expression turned serious. The old enemy. Jace nodded. It's waking, and it remembers this place. The chief looked out across the distant hills, clouds hanging heavy. Then we must prepare, he said. And you will lead them as guardian. Over the next few days, Jace trained harder than ever before. But this time, he wasn't training alone. Warriors from the village joined him, guided by his strength and calm. Even Elder Marak, once his harshest critic, offered Jace an old blade passed down through the guardian bloodline. You've earned it, the elder said. Just don't get yourself killed, boy. Meanwhile, Lyri had become more than just a friend. She trained as a healer and studied ancient scrolls, helping Jace understand what the soul beast memories truly meant. One night, under the light of the twin moons, she sat with him near the fire, her voice soft. You know, you're not just our protector now, you're a symbol. You're proof that humans and aliens don't have to be enemies. Jace looked into the fire. I never asked to be that, he said. I just wanted to help you. Lyri smiled. And that's exactly why you are. But peace didn't last long. One night, strange lights appeared in the sky. Fast-moving, silent, and too perfect to be natural. They passed over the mountain and vanished beyond the northern ridge. Jace stood on the cliff, his jaw tight. It's them, he said. The ones who broke the Soul Beasts long ago. The ones who started it all. The chief joined him, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder. Then your real test is coming, he said. And it won't be in trials or visions. It'll be in battle. Jace turned, eyes glowing faintly again, but not from pain, this time from purpose. Let them come, he said. We're not the same village they tried to destroy. Not anymore. And in the days that followed, warriors gathered from nearby settlements, drawn by the old signals. The glowing guardian mark, and the stories whispered. Across the wind, stories of a human boy who fought a soul beast, returned from spirit trials, and stood now as a protector of both alien and human alike. Children followed him as he trained, mimicking his movements. Elders prayed near the spirit stones, hoping the fire within Jace would burn long and steady. And at night, he often stood alone, watching the stars, wondering how many more beasts he would have to face. How many more villages needed someone like him, but deep inside, he knew one thing clearly. Now, he wasn't fighting alone anymore. The boy who was once feared was now the shield between two worlds, and whatever darkness came next would face the fire that lived inside him, the fire that did not burn to destroy, but to protect, and far beyond, in the stars, unseen by all. A cold voice whispered, "The guardian rises again. Let the war begin."